Marvel vs. Capcom. It is an arcade machine that I plugged endless quarters into, but now we have them in plastic form thanks to Marvel Legends and the Gamerverse line, subline. I'm not quite exactly sure what to call it, but the fact is now we have Omega Red and War Machine to take a look at in this 2-pack. So here we have the figures. I don't really know where to start, so I think I'll just start with my right hand. We have War Machine. Here we have War Machine, and this piece right here, the rocket cannon that's on his shoulder, does slide back and forth, which is a great little feature, and you have to attach this, I guess, rocket launcher on top of the ball joint so that it can move around. There's a lot of flexibility just with this one feature, which I think makes it look incredible. When we're talking about War Machine, we want something that looks apart, looks separate from Iron Man, and the way to do that is by making him more of a machine of war. You also have to remember this is part of the Gamerverse line, and they're trying to emulate very closely Marvel vs. Capcom. And I think they've done an amazing job of having this figure look exactly, or at least as close as possible, to its digital counterpart. Now, what I like about this figure, when you hold it in your hands, this is something that maybe doesn't come across on camera, is that there is a great juxtaposition between the shiny parts, this very baby blue metallic look on War Machine, and the matte black armor that sits all around it. What I think that does is it allows the shiny paint to pop more than it normally would have if it was just shiny on shiny material. There's just something classic, something really satisfying about looking at this figure and holding it in your hands. It also does come with additional hand sculpts. So we have the punching fists that go along with War Machine, but then we also have the repulsor hands. Now, these are an older style of repulsor hands because they don't hinge back and forth. Now, the other thing is it doesn't come with repulsor blast effects. If you have any Iron Man from, I don't know, the last couple of years, you probably have them in multiple colors at this point. But to have that included in the box would have been a nice thing because we did get a blast effect for the rocket launcher. And it's this thing right here. This almost, like, it feels very G.I. Joe classified, this blast effect, and the rocket part, this will sit right inside his mounted cannon. So when he holds it like this, there is this really cool effect where you have something blasting out. Strangely enough, is that he also additionally comes with a rocket, like a mini rocket, and it doesn't really situate, or it doesn't fit inside of the barrel of the rocket launcher. It is just an extra accessory that's floating in the box. I went to the official product shots for War Machine, and it doesn't show where it locks or it situates itself. It is just something that is an accessory based on the game. I'm grateful that we have it. Yeah, I think it looks pretty cool. But the fact that it doesn't fit anywhere or sit inside of this rocket launcher to maybe change it slightly from its video game origin feels like a little missed opportunity, or at least have something where it would sit or lock into the character because there is a peg system underneath the rocket where that theoretically could have been possible. The only thing that's going to cause just a little bit of pain is this shoulder rocket, because what's going to happen is it's shifting the center of balance for this character, so you'll have to fiddle around and play with the articulation so that it sits just right. Kind of impossible to deal with, but maybe widening his feet just a little more would have given him a more solid base. But sometimes I'll reach for a stand for his feet so that he can get into some more crazy, possibly video game inspired poses where you don't really have to worry about gravity. So I like War Machine, and in fact I was anticipating him being my favorite character in the box. However, Omega Red was a surprising figure to me. Here we go. Always love a good villain, and I think I remember Omega Red mostly from the X-Men cartoon back in the 90s, or was it like the Iron Man one? One of those two. I remember Omega Red taking a role in that, and he's not like one of my favorite villains, but when I held him in my hand, when I started posing him up, once I started putting in these little tentacles underneath his forearms and moving him around, the fact that he has a ponytail that can rotate 360 degrees, I was actually finding myself enjoying Omega Red more as an action figure than I was War Machine. And similar to War Machine, he does have pinless double-jointed elbows, but he has the pinned double-jointed knees. I don't know why that's happening. Again, maybe part reuse or something like that. But it was really cool to get this guy into different poses, and this bandolier, or this like suspender setup he has over his torso, you can move and flex with the character somewhat. So there isn't just this overall sense where he's stuck in place because of like these little plastic straps, you can move him around, and there is a surprising amount of articulation and maneuverability when it comes to Omega Red. These pieces right here that pop in and out were initially difficult at first, but then you realize that the ports underneath his forearms are a little bit softer plastic. So they do move, they do stretch. Over time, will that hold up? I don't know, but it is a cool effect. And with the claw hands that he has, it looks like he's like trying to grab them or guide them towards his opponent. This is one of those deceptively simple action figures that the more you play around with it, the more you appreciate. So he has the Omega symbols on the top of his hands. He has it on his bandana, and the face sculpt here looks scary. Like, that's what you want from a good villain. What you also might know, because the shoulder armor blocks it, there are butterfly joints with this. And again, because this is a softer plastic harness or suspender situation, there is a considerable amount of range he has, and you can see just how well, once we have one arm T-posed kind of, the other one as far forward as possible, that it does crunch so that you get a sense of action, which is something you really want from an action figure. Now the hair on the back is going to cause probably the most aggravation for you because he does have so much flexibility that the head being locked in place because of the hair is a little unfortunate. But when we compare it to War Machine, and you would think War Machine was a little better with the head articulation department, but not really. Whatever neck that this is on, it's just not lending itself well to a lot of full range of motion. I'm getting similar ability to move the head around, even with the hair getting in the way, as I do with War Machine. And the paint areas up on the shoulders, on the knees, look clean for the most part. If anything, if I had to be super picky about it, right, there is this little area mist on the back shoulder here. But honestly, since we haven't been getting a whole lot of paint on the back of figures lately, it's just good to see some of it there. But yeah, Omega Red was the surprising standout favorite in this pack for me. Quickly summarize and run down what I like, what I don't like, what I possibly would have changed. Well, I like that this is a 2-pack, that you get 2 figures, because I don't think I would have picked up Omega Red on my own volition. As sad as that is, because this is my favorite figure out of this 2-pack. I was really just hoping that War Machine here was going to be my favorite, and this would just be like a nice bonus. This became the star. I also love the fidelity to the Marvel vs. Capcom game. If you put these guys next to their digital counterparts, there is so much similarity that they took all of those pixels, they shoved them into plastic, and we're now able to hold them in our hands. The paintwork, subtle but impactful. We have the shiny bits of the armor for War Machine, and then the matte over armor, which gives it even a shinier appearance. And then we have Omega Red, which mostly red, but very clean, and also very expressive because he has the butterfly joints. He has these little whips that come out underneath his forearms, which gives it more dynamic range. There's just a lot to like about how these all come together and how they all look. I don't like is these little metal bits that come out of his forearm. They don't fit perfectly right out of the box. There's just like some moments where you're like, am I doing this right? And the hair, if it was situated in maybe just a slightly different way, we would get even more range out of this guy, and he would even be a better figure. Again, became my favorite very quickly here. War Machine, I like that they went with some missiles and stuff like that, but the fact that there's nowhere to put them is, it's unfortunate, because while that does work in a video game context, in a physical space, in a toy context, those things often go missing, and if there's not a dedicated spot, that's just going to make it all the easier to get lost in the shuffle. Now, what I would have changed is adding blast effects, or at least different types of blast effects. We're missing some repulsor effects. I think those would just have been a nice inclusion, and I do like the setup for these little whips that Omega Red gets, but if they were a bendable wire, that would have made these so much sweeter. So what do I think of this 2-pack overall? I'm actually really impressed. The ability for Marvel Legends to capture these figures from the game and put them into plastic, incredible. They did an amazing job. And War Machine, I think, should really be commended for that, as well as Omega Red. Also, while giving him just like added range and articulation with the butterfly joints, they're so smooth and nice. But like everything now, especially the Gamerverse stuff, these are getting harder and harder to track down by the day. And if you come across these at any sort of decent price, you'll honestly, if you pick it up, you'll honestly be probably more surprised at how well Omega Red is as a figure compared to War Machine. Even though War Machine is probably the one everybody's seeking out, a lot of armor walls and stuff like that. Iron Man and Iron Man armor style characters are just, I mean, that's what sells the boxes, right? But then you get characters like this, Omega Red, a good villain who is made even better by a great action figure. And if you like our discussion on Marvel Legends, well, you got to hit the subscribe button because I talk about action figures, pop culture, collectibles, blasters, anything action related. The RyFi channel has you covered. And so I want to hear your thoughts about this Marvel vs. Capcom style characters for Marvel Legends. Are you on board with this, or do we have enough of these characters already? That's all I know about these two figures, War Machine and Omega Red. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time.